security is built in ahead of time, not after the fact. We hear a lot of times security being referenced as a slinky. And so often organizations innovate first and then security comes later. And what we're trying to do is kind of throw away the slinky and develop a solution that incorporates security from the get-go. Bit of background on the projects Des and I are leading. They're projects that are protecting data that might have been on a stolen device, enabling businesses to recover from nation state attacks or insider threats, managing and monitoring the network for threat actors and responding. So we're doing a variety of different engagements in this space, and really excited to share those stories with you today. If we move on to the next slide, I guess the why are we doing this? There is more vulnerability today than ever before. I guess there's more opportunity as well. We've digitized at pace this last year. We've seen essential services that we would never have thought of go online. Having that conversation with traders that they actually are going to be working from home and actually will be successful doing so is amazing in terms of the change that we've seen over the last year. But with that, there is new risk and vulnerabilities. And there's a lot of stats that have come out, one of which is that last year, ransomware payments rose by 33%. We've seen a rise of misinformation, phishing attacks, fraudulent goods. And all of this combined, it's really now is the time to make sure we're securing every element of our business, and that's built into our processes. And that's really what today's discussion is all about, and the workshop. So I think over to Des to kind of start us off on intrinsic security.
Great, thanks, Liz. So look, I think there's kind of 6 points I wanted to get across within this section. I don't know if any of you saw the Sanjay Poonen interview yesterday or talk track. Hey Saj, good to see you there. He mentioned about ingredients and supplements, right? So if you go to a doctor, they look at your overall body and they check and assess age, and they'll put you on either an antibiotic or onto some type of supplement to recover you from an illness. And it's very targeted at that specific illness. What he was saying was, imagine going to a supplement doctor and asking for 5,000 pills and trying to cover your body against every form of virus and illness. It just wouldn't work. So the whole concept around what we mean by intrinsic security is that it's built into a strategy. It's not a product, it's not a bundle, it's not a tool, it's an overall strategy. And making sure that there is secure by design, pre-validated, pre-engineered solutions that are going into systems across an organization. We recognized that remote working obviously has increased and enhanced the severity of threats. And overnight, organizations were faced with a complex network of environments that were more exposed at the perimeter. We recognize that systems are complex. There's new IoT, 5G, wireless systems and strategies being enhanced and enabled by many organizations across the globe. And what we're seeing is that these attacks aren't becoming necessarily more complex, but they are causing more sophisticated cyber incidents within organizations because intrinsic security has not been part of an overarching strategy within an organization. So we've recognized that secure by design is really, really important, and zero trust is also really important within many organizations. And that fundamentally is where organizations do not trust any device or endpoint, which Liz and I will touch on later in the presentation. So I got a bit creative with this slide. These are some of and I'm really proud of these animations. Bruno, I know you and I worked together before. My PowerPoint skills have come on quite a lot. But in essence, these are some of the buzzwords that we see within organizations today. And that's really focused on zero trust, risk, resilience, how organizations can respond, prevent, detect, how can they enhance their network security. But first and foremost, what really is important is getting that intrinsic security portfolio correct. On the next slide, we're just going to quickly show you a video. This is from TikTok. It is, for those of you that don't know TikTok, it is a social platform that encourages users to upload videos between 10 to 60 seconds. This video here is done by a 10-year-old with millions and millions of views, and he is kind of a thought leader in security. And he just shows you how easy it is to get information from a location by simply uploading a video. I just realized I need to quickly stop sharing, and I'm going to reshare my screen because I didn't put the sound on. Just one moment.
Hello everyone, today I'll be showing you how hackers can find your exact location with just one photo you send them. Now when I say your exact location, I mean dead on location, like coordinates. The way that they would take this information just from a photo is by using EXIF data. Now every picture you take includes strips of EXIF data. Now some sites like Snapchat and Discord remove this just for safety reasons, but some don't. Now I will show you how to do this, but this is for educational purposes only, and if you do this, I cannot be held responsible for what you do. So here I took a picture on my phone, which is right here, and all I gotta do is click upload and it will show. Now I'm hiding my information, and this is the site that you could go view your EXIF data. You can just search up EXIF data. My exact coordinates are right under here and just from this one photo. Enjoy and be safe.
So that just short snippet can actually show how easy it is. So it's not very sophisticated, but it is increasing in its nature, and people are more vulnerable. And we'll talk about how organizations are going to be looking to enhance and protect their data going forward.
I think as well, Des, that video shows how, as consumers, we're now more aware of how our data is being protected, and we're more aware of the mechanisms. And I think more and more, children that are coming through the technological era are going to be concerned with how their data is managed and protected. So something we'll see more of.
Exactly. And then just one final one, and it was really interesting. I was out for a walk with a friend in my bubble, adhering to social norms and regulations, but I was explaining this video, and it was so bizarre. Just as I finished explaining my very interesting story, this cable was on the floor, and I was like, that was like I placed that there. But you'll understand what I mean when you see this 10-second clip. So you can see that that's just so innocently lying around, and then next of all, you've got an attack. And it's easy. My parents probably would do that. They would plug that in to charge their phone at home. And it is that if you're not in the security industry, if you're not in this space, it is very easy to be caught out by this. And I think I wrote a blog a while ago about that. Getting our first PC and getting a virus on that within, I think, a week, and not knowing what it actually was, and actually having to bring the PC into a shop to get repaired. It is an interesting way of looking at things, but this simplicity now is causing more opportunity for cyber criminals, and it is causing more complexities within organizations as well. So with regards to here on this, Liz and I are going to break this up between the two of us, and we're going to talk you through a little framework and the key elements to intrinsic security. I'm going to take the first two, protecting data, securing devices and endpoints, and Liz is going to talk us through the safeguarding networks and build resilience capability as well that we look at. So here's a nice picture of two people in a storage room. It's a Dell data center, and they're looking at all of the different capabilities there with the network cables coming out. The World Economic Forum are writing a lot about this right now. So data needs to be protected no matter where it lives, and it needs to be backed up and recoverable. There are a lot more requirements out there now to make sure that this is taking place. We obviously all know that data has exploded and been a big impact in our lives of making it an on-demand economy. But this extraordinary advance in technology and the spread of connected devices has created pressure for organizations, but also for regulatory and other organization compliance businesses to make sure that data can be safe and secure, people's information is secure, and that it fosters innovation, but it also addresses concerns around how our data is being used and stored and whether it is reliable for people to be interacting with the organization. Liz alluded to Rachel Botsman at the start of this talk, who's a trust expert, but there are a lot of sayings out there. Trust takes years to build, but seconds to lose. And organizations that expose people's data will have a negative impact in their bottom line. So in a connected world, companies grapple with the balance between data security and then innovation, and that demand from consumers around personalization and interoperability. But first and foremost, organizations and consumers need to make sure that their data is secure and private. So the World Economic Forum have said that there are a number of different countries looking at different regulations. We're all very familiar around the GDPR regulations that have taken place within Europe and the standards that has helped organizations protect, but also for consumers to be protected as well. But we're seeing other global organizations and countries having to adhere to new regulations. In 2018, India had a draft data protection framework that mandates all data needs to be stored locally. Italy has required that telecom operators need to store their communications data for up to 6 years. Imagine the volumes of data that will create. Ethiopia has even stated that telecom providers need to have content stored for up to 1 year, and that includes metadata as well. So that's sheer volumes of data that is being protected. But also there's the grapple of cross-boundary and international data travel. Where will that actually sit? How will that be backed up? How will governance procedures outside of EU be actually protected across organizations? So some governments, and Liz will touch on it, the Bank of England standard for the UK in cyber resilience, but some governments are starting to look at rules, policies, and procedures for technology, and those vendors that are associated with that will need to adhere to it. So that is something that Dell is very strong in, but other organizations are getting better in it as well. The second point here is around securing devices and endpoints. So what do we mean by a device? And Liz touched on this at the start of our presentation. A device is not just a laptop, and that's exactly what Dell is thought of. One of my favorite words since joining Dell is heterogeneous, and the complexities that organizations now face, from multi-cloud strategies right through to different PCs as a service within an organization. There could be one organization that will have HP, Lenovo, and Dell. But how do you make sure that there is a consistent strategy around securing that device, but also how does it actually expand outside of a device such as an Amazon Alexa, and keeping that secured at home? Liz uses a stat, sorry Liz, I'm taking your stat, that there is on average 10.4 IoT devices within a home in the UK. And I've just recently moved and I've set my whole property up with smart plugs, smart lamps, and Alexas throughout. Not in this room though, in the office, because I'm afraid of what they're listening to. But that data needs to be safe and secure. So having that element of security is really, really important. It needs to be secure no matter where it is, in transit, in use, or in flight. It needs to be secure. How it is backed up, and how can it be prevented, detected, and how can we respond if there is an attack in an organization. So endpoint security is really important. It's something I'm actually become really passionate about. And the security of devices is at the forefront of many organizations today.
As I was just going to add on the endpoint side, in the US, there was a lot of riots that had happened to the Capitol, and people broke into the Capitol and actually stole the devices and laptops of some really senior people in the government. And a big conversation has emerged, and one that we've actually been involved in for a while, is how do we safeguard devices that are in the wrong hands as well? Because we all know that organizations have different privileges allowed to different people, and you would imagine someone in government has, access to things that us common people maybe wouldn't have access to. And in the event of a disaster, you're fleeing that environment, making sure that even if your computer is unlocked, you have the ability centrally to delete that data, encrypt it, lock people out, is hugely valuable. I think as the endpoints get more access to critical systems, that security needs to be built in that experience to make sure that data is safeguarded. Just another thing that I think has been coming up a lot. I'll also start to talk about the network, because that is a really key component to an intrinsic security approach and solution. So when we look at networks, we Probably don't think much about them, if I'm honest. It's just more about if you're a user connectivity. But if you're in, any form of application development or on any IT teams or working with customers, the network has become quite a cumbersome and difficult challenge. We have this picture on the right that shows the complexity and of a network, right? They've kind of become a really intricate web. You've got your core systems and data centers that are on the corporate network that are probably housing really critical data sets and applications. Then you've got your employees that also have to be on the network to access those systems. Then you've got your users who are also engaging with those systems from an app. And they may be actually sitting in a coffee shop. You have people working from home. You have people working, from their Ubers, right? So we have people all over the place, and it's getting really difficult to be able to manage threats on the network because there's just so many people on it. And so what we've been working on with organizations is like most things right now, using software and intelligent software to be able to logically separate the network. And so having a dynamic software-based network can help you to reduce complexities around the network, to be able to set policies that say who has access to what, and then make sure that if there is an attack, we don't have what's called an east to west spread. So we don't have, something happening over here at a remote site that ends up spreading to the rest of the network really quickly because everything's connected, which is also called a flat network. And I think organizations are on that journey, but it's really important capability that starts to be that needs to be incorporated as we move forward, and also incorporate things like 5G as well. I just wanted to talk about an example on the network side. There was a casino a while back that maybe you guys know the story, but they were a casino that had an IoT device in their fish tank that just fed the fish and monitored the temperature. And IoT devices, as fun as they are, and Des has a whole connected house, so he's one to talk, are amazing technology, but they don't have enterprise class security built into them. So they're often a focal point for threat actors because they're easy to compromise. So in this case, the IoT device fish tank was compromised, but it was attached to the network. So the casino and all of their essential operations ended up being taken down with this attack. That's exactly what we don't want to see, is a network that is so connected that when one part goes down, the rest falls, kind of becomes that single point of failure. And so that's a big piece of intrinsic security, is moving to a software-based network so we safeguard the data and we also can contain attacks more effectively. That all is to say, we kind of want to take all of this together, the protecting data, protecting endpoints, safeguarding networks, and then talk about building resilience. So if you don't mind, moving on to the next slide, building cyber resilience capabilities has become really important to organizations of all sizes. Now, this has been driven by a few things. Regulation, as Des mentioned, there's the financial services sector globally. It could be not only the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the US has a variety of legislation that's all about being able to recover key business services in the event of a catastrophic attack. And that's quite a shift. I think over the last 10 years, and maybe if it was 10 years ago, we would have seen a lot more conversations about how we need to identify threats better, we need to detect them better, and we just need to prevent anything from happening. And as we've digitized and we've taken these really cool technologies and brought them to market, we've also presented more vulnerabilities and opportunity for threat and risk, which has really made it's when, not if, an organization will be hit by a cyber threat incident. So being resilient is all about being able to recover, keep systems and services available, even if it's a minimal version. We call that a minimal viable company, but we talk to organizations all the time about how do we ensure that you can recover something or keep some services available. And that's going to be a combination of technology and process and people, right? So not only is it having technology that allows you to recover, but also maybe saying we can use posted notes, we can use paper checks, but we actually need this data and this application or else we're toast as an organization. So having that discussion and balance is a big piece of leveraging an intrinsic security strategy as well. So I think that's enough of Des and I talking. We're really excited to get interactive with you. So get out your phones and we're going to do a little bit of a Mentimeter quiz. So if you just take a picture, take out your picture, your camera
If you
app.
open up your camera and just point the camera to the QR code, and it'll bring you to your website, to a website, menti.com.
And Des, if you don't mind letting me share, we're going to do a little Mentimeter. So we want to hear from you. Hopefully all of you have been able to use that QR code, but if not, I'll give you a minute at the top. You can just go to menti.com and use this code right here. And we're going to have a few questions before our breakout session, because after all, this is a workshop. So you all come from different organizations. What do you feel like your organization is really good at? Are they good at building a network? Are they good at securing devices and endpoints, protecting data, building resilience? What are we thinking? Will be good to see. Let's see. Oh, cool. So we're seeing protecting data, which is great. So they maybe these organizations have really clear standards for how long they're retaining data for, what they're doing with their data. I think we're seeing that a lot more with the social media platforms like Google and Facebook being very clear about how they're going to be using your data, and having privacy policies no longer be these really long legal documents, but now really clear, especially with WhatsApp and Facebook. I think people have really jumped to the likes of Signal. So very interesting. Okay, safeguarding networks, building cyber resilience, very cool. So everyone remember this. I think we're seeing protect data as an area that people are doing really well. Does for our breakout rooms, we can ask people how they're seeing that in practice. Building cyber resilience makes me thrilled that we're thinking about that kind of extinction level event and what would happen. Securing devices and endpoints, I find funny because we all are working from home right now. So I think that's a gap, everyone, for your organization or for your clients, that we could maybe be better at. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Yes, this might be similar to the last question, but if you had to pick one thing, what should my organization improve on? Let's see what people are starting to put in there. Build resilience, it's a good one. Securing devices, definitely important. And it's hard to say, right? Because all of these are really, really important criteria.
Well, I think, as we open up again and people become used to working from home, like I love the idea. Dell was really good at it before, but hybrid working is how I work best. But when coffee shops and restaurants open up in the summertime and you're out in my area, I live in Balham, and last year in lockdown, when things could open up, they had the streets, they closed off that traffic street and put the restaurant outside in the street. But there was a lot of people there working, and it was really hot last summer. So Liz, you were saying that exposure to the network is insane when you connect through a login as a hotspot on a restaurant. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you should not ever be connecting to a public Wi-Fi network. I'm in a cybersecurity course right now, and that's their biggest guidance is like whether it's the airport, even plugging your USB in at the airport is a threat. Like, and then there's that conversation about usability and security. Like you need to charge your phone, so you're going to, but it's a challenge.
So hotspotting off your mobile is the best way. It's the most secure. But even having a comm strategy in place is really
absolutely,
and that's something that we haven't seen really in many organizations, that technology is one component, but the people, process, technology, and ecosystem is equally important. And having a robust comms is so important to let people know what they should and should not be doing when they will be moving around more freely when the restrictions lift in the summertime.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just writing some of these down because I think this will be good discussion points on where we could improve. Securing devices and endpoints and building cyber resilience, I think, really good areas that all organizations can improve on. Now, we talked a little bit about people, process, and technology. And it's really interesting for me to get a sense of what you view as the most important. Is it having the right people that can do the job and capability? Is it having a process that lines up and makes sense? Or is it we need to invest in good technology first as the foundation? And if you guys can order those in priority, most important to least, that would be awesome.
So there's 3 options for you to choose, and every time you choose an option, and the second one will come up.
Yeah. Des, it would be good to hear your answer, what you thought for this.
Well, being in a technology company, I will like to always put technology as number one. But we do recognize that no large digital transformation is a success without its people and its process aligned to it. And that is something that organizations often fail in.
Yeah.
And as a result, then the technology implementation is deemed a failure. So I think that having the people, process, and technology in those order is something really important. And I think that's something that we, as an organization as Dell, need to educate a lot of our colleagues and peers, because we are salespeople and that's what they want to sell. But there is a broader holistic view across an organization that robust comms need to go in place to make sure that people know what to do in an area if a new technology is coming in. Fundamentally, organizations want to be at the prevent side of things, but they are normally on the back foot of the response.
It's very hard. I think all of them are really valuable. I think people is important, but capability moves around a lot, especially in the security space. It's really hard to keep people in one role. And so while you need strong executive level support, you want the process and the technology working together. So even if people leave the company, you still have the ability to be strong and secure. That's really helpful, everyone. Thank you for answering. And then there's one last question, which is more of just an open discussion. Do you incorporate zero trust principles as part of intrinsic security? We have not talked about zero trust yet. We've mentioned it a little bit, but it is a concept that comes up a lot. So we kind of just wanted to throw you in the fire and see if this is something that you've talked at all about. Bit of background on zero trust is this concept that we can no longer trust people inside of our business networks. We used to just look at security as just the perimeter, but now it's both people internally and externally that could be a threat. So we need to make sure we have a never trust, always verify approach. And so is that something that you guys are trying to incorporate as you look at protecting data, endpoints, the network, or not? And let's see what people have said. I'm hearing yes, which is great. Not as much as we should, that's fair. It's definitely not something I feel like you can just flip on. It's a total restructure and change of the way that you do things. So it's going to be starting with a small piece of the organization, or starting with new services you bring online, and then kind of modernizing.
But security doesn't need to be at organizational level. It needs to be in your own way of doing things. We recognize at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of phishing attacks. If the email looks dodgy, don't click on it. It's basic 101. But 95% of cyber attacks actually take place through human error. So that is the biggest threat to all organizations, is insider threat, aka clicking on the wrong attachment, doing personal work on your work device, for example, and exposing the network in that way. So zero trust needs to begin with the employee, but also the organization needs to have a holistic viewpoint and strategy on zero trust principles and communicate them down through the organization.
Absolutely. Well, it's super helpful to have everyone's engagement and actually take note of some of those. And if you have any questions, it will be a great time to ask in our breakout sessions. Des, if you're okay to share,
Yeah.
I think we're actually going to have Will move us into 2 breakout rooms. During these breakout rooms, we're going to have a lot of fun, but everyone's going to participate and answer some questions, and we're going to learn a little bit from you as well. So really excited about it.
I've set 8 minutes, so
8
awesome.
minutes.
It'll be quick. Right. People should be joining now. Hello.
Hello. Looks like we're all making our way back.
Yep, I think so.
Great. Let's see where it does. Oh, there's Des.
Hi guys.
Hello.
We had a really engaging session. I'm conscious we're almost at time, but Des, it would be great to hear from your perspective and your group, what you talked about, and then I'll share from my side.
Oh, great. Thanks, Liz, for putting us on the spot. But we had some really interesting conversations here. I think, Becky, there's one action for you just to follow up with David Studd with regards to the conversation around raw data and intrinsic security. There was a conversation last time with Mark Molyneux on that, but it would be good to just pick that up about how we protect data to and from the cloud. Obviously, we've recognized, and David had mentioned that there is a challenge around people to convince them what an intrinsic security strategy actually looks like, and having that people and process of intrinsic security brought in. So having that conversation early on is really, really important. The second point to note there is that the Saj was pointing out that there was a number of conversations last year with the bank, a number of CISOs, but there was one particular CISO that said that they want more secure products, not just independent siloed solutions, because at the moment there's so many different organizations that are coming with these solutions that the products then by default aren't intrinsically secure. And that there is one of the main concerns around the complexity of the security portfolio. I guess, Saj or David, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, thanks, Des. That was fine from my point.
Yeah, no, only thing I'll say, just building on the secure products versus security products perspective, is I do think from a solution development perspective across the cybersecurity sector, we need to think more about building in security into our products much more. So it's something we're quite focused on. And that's why I think that, there's such a growing need in terms of intrinsic security being baked into this stuff at inception.
That's really helpful. And it's actually really interesting because our team kind of took a different approach. We had a lot of discussions on the user side and how user awareness and kind of security starting with your users is really important. I think there's two elements to that. One is making sure that users are aware of what they're signing up to, whether you're, social media platform or any sort of vendor, having really clear T&Cs that aren't just these long legal documents that you scroll and click accept. I think we're seeing that transform before us, but having a really clear idea of what you're signing up to. Then also users have power to stop threats and be in a position to, be more vigilant. And so awareness training is huge. Will, you had a few other insights I might have missed.
Yeah, it was kind of converse to what Saj was saying about intrinsic security. I think there's almost like an assumption that the products that we use in the workplace have intrinsic security built into them. So I'm just going to trust this, trust that. And I think particularly on the onboarding process, just training people and keeping them aware that, these are the products you're using. They're not necessarily secure. They're as secure as how you use them. There are good ways to use it, bad ways to use it, and just letting people understand what best practice actually looks like, because we can't simply just rely on the technology to do it all for us. And I think in many organizations that can be overlooked. And if that's kind of baked in right from the offset, then yeah, I think that can only be a good thing.
Great. And I think, that was kind of similar to our discussions. We had a bit about technology as well, but I think in an effort of time, we might want to just close and say thank you to everyone for joining. And please add us on LinkedIn. We really appreciate the discussion and the insights. And hopefully you found it interactive and helpful as you're on your journey to developing an intrinsic security approach and strategy within your business.